Can you guys hear the bass of that car that's driving by? Like, I can't hear the music, but I can, like, just hear the bass on the speakers, and it sounds pretty bad. Hey Growl fans, it's me again, Victor Salinas, with another questions and answers video. I'm going to be answering 4 questions on today's video from subscribers both on YouTube and on the Growl website. Before we get started, I'd like to invite everyone once again that has any questions about these videos, about writing, about the Growl books, about me personally, to email me directly at victor.salinas@growell.com. I'll put my email address in the video and also in the video description. And you can always feel free to ask me any questions or make any comments also in the comments of this video. And a lot of them I will use in future videos if I think the question is broad enough to appeal to a lot of people. Sometimes I get a similar question multiple times, so I know to use that in an upcoming video because that's a good indicator that other people have that. But don't limit yourself to ones that you think are going to make it into a video. I do answer everyone that sends me an email, so I definitely encourage that. And it doesn't have to even be a question. If you just want to say hi, you just want to drop a comment, make a suggestion, you can definitely reach me at that email address or comment in the video as well. So moving on to our first question comes from Saba. Saba asks, as a writer, do you get rejected or turned down because of your age? As I'm at secondary, which is high school to countries that call it high school, and I have a great novel idea, but I don't know if people would take me seriously. Is it better to get an agent? Would they take me seriously? Well, Saba, I don't think that age necessarily has much to do with it, although it may, and I'll explain myself. The most important thing when it comes to any product, whether it's a book or a movie or a piece of music or, you know, a manufactured item that gets designed by someone, the most important thing is, does it work? Is it good? The considerations of a person's age really have, in all technical respects, nothing to do with it. I mean, we can think of child performers, like in the music industry, that are very young, and they go on to be very successful. It's not about how old they are, it's how good the product is. Now, that being said, the gatekeepers, if you will, in the publishing industry, if you go out and try to get an agent, or try to reach a publishing house directly, if they find out how old you are, they might be more or less skeptical about that. And I won't say that that's entirely wrong either. There's a lot of wisdom that comes with age. I'm not very old. I'm 27 as of the making of this video. And I find that that gets truer and truer as time goes on. I look back at things even a year ago and think like, oh man, if I only knew that today, how better my life could be. So with age comes a lot of wisdom. It is rare to find someone, let's say high school age, and I don't know you personally, that has enough accumulated experience to be really good at anything. Now, I'm not saying that as a personal attack. In high school, had I tried to strike it into writing, would not have made it. I didn't have enough practice. I didn't have enough capability on my own to do that, and that's something that over the 10 years after high school I've really worked on. Now, that's not to say that it's impossible, and I don't want to discourage you. If you do feel that you're ready to go out and get an agent, you maybe want to explore self-publishing or some other avenue, you definitely should do that. And whether you succeed or fail is not as important as you actually doing it and getting that experience, because an artist's work is never finished. If your first one is a success or a failure, that doesn't mean that your next one is going to be a success or a failure. So to sum up the answer to the question, Saba, I would say that age really has nothing to do with it. It's the quality of the work. However, in most of the cases, a younger person is probably not going to be as proficient as an older person. So I wouldn't rush you and say that you need to get out there and put something out there if you're not ready. However, if you are ready, there's no better time than right now. Okay, moving on to our second question. SteelVoltage asks, how long on average do you make your chapters? Well, my chapters vary based on, what is occurring in those chapters. This is very similar to the question that I get often, is like, how long should my book be? How long should my novel be? And the correct answer to that question is as long as it needs to be. Some stories can be told in 90 pages. Some need 1,200 pages, like, The Lord of the Rings. Some need many, many, many thousands of pages to be told, like the famous Wheel of Time books. The saga is so big and so great that you couldn't tell it fully with just a few hundred or even a few thousand pages. It takes tens of thousands of pages. So that goes with chapters as well. It really depends on what the objective of each chapter is. So I don't know off the top of my head really what would be an average for me. I've had chapters that are as short as 1/2 of a page. It's just one scene, maybe one verbal exchange between two characters, or a character is going to do something, and that short chapter just kind of builds a suspense of, well, where are they going? Like, what exactly are they working on? You don't find out until later. Or it can just be a transitory thing. Sometimes you have to throw in a chapter just to link two other scenes with a character in that are in different parts of the book. And then I have some chapters that might be 25, 30 pages, especially chapters that are really involved in action sequences. Something that's built up and built up and built up, and then you finally get like an explosive scene of action, of violence, or even of action through like discussion or emoting feelings. Those kinds of chapters tend to be very, very long. So it kind of, when I write, I don't think, okay, well, this chapter needs to be 15 or 18 pages. I just go until it stops. And then, of course, the length of the chapter changes through editing back and forth. It might, there have been many times I can remember I've written 10 pages for a chapter and ended up only using 5, or had a chapter that was only 2 pages long and then had to expand it to 20 to help explain something. So a sort of mean average, if you took like the first Growlithe book and added up all the page lengths and divided it by the number of chapters, you might have like 12 or 15 or something like that. But again, whether that continues into the future, I can't really say, because I make them as long as they need to be. Really, I should say I make them as short as they need to be. If you've followed some of the other videos, you know that I'm a big fan of brevity, of being really quick-paced with things. So I actually try to make them as short as possible. So I wouldn't say, like, if I were asking myself, how long do I make my chapters? I wouldn't say it like that. I would say, how short do I make them? I try to keep them as streamlined as possible. So I hope that answers your question, SteelVoltage. If you're looking for like an example on what to do in your own work, I would say that only make them as long as they absolutely need to be, as long as you feel comfortable with, as long as you adequately explain something. Don't try to aim for a target. If you're asking to know what mine is, just out of curiosity, I would say somewhere between 12 and 15 is the average, but the range can be, a half of a page up to 30 pages, say, depending. Okay, this next one is from a gentleman named Jorge, and he lives in Venezuela. He speaks both English and Spanish. I had a lengthy conversation with him via email, and I'm going to read one of his original questions in Spanish, and then I'll give you my English translation, and then I'll answer it in English. En vista de que publicar un libro aquí en Venezuela es algo más que imposible, he decidido colgar 3 de las novelas ya escritas para que sean descargadas gratis desde mi página web. ¿Qué consejo me puedes dar acerca de eso? Okay, so translated, that is, being that publishing a book here in Venezuela is something on the impossible, I have decided to release 3 of my already written novels to be downloaded for free from my webpage on the internet. What advice can you give me about doing this? Well, Jorge, I would say that if you have 3 that you've already completed and think that they should be released to the public, the first thing you have to ask yourself is, what do you expect in return for doing this? A writer has different motives depending on what you're writing for. If I'm writing a letter to my girlfriend, a romantic letter, obviously it's going to be for free, and the audience is only intended to one person, and there's only going to be one handwritten copy, and she's the one that's going to receive it. So I'm sure, before you sat down to write all 3 of these novels, you had an idea of what you wanted to accomplish. The first thing I think that any novelist wants is for people to see their vision, for them to share in their story. So if you're not worried about monetary compensation, definitely release all of them for free from your website so that people can read them. That being said, I would advise not releasing all of them together for a number of reasons. First of all, you don't know what the impact is going to be, exactly how it's going to be received. And also, there's a lot of technical details if you're going to do this yourself that you might want to work out by just releasing one of them at a time. So just put, one, if it's a series, put the first one out there, or maybe even just part of the first one in like a PDF that people can download, and see exactly what impact that has. Do people respond to it? Do people like it? Do people ask you more questions? Maybe if you release one for free and people like it, they'll pay you for the other ones. So you can accomplish both of your goals of having people read them and maybe make some money with it as well. And also, you don't want to inundate people with too much. With book publishing, I like the fact that it takes time to write and edit a book. Because people can be overwhelmed really easily with that. That's why, with movies, they might do a 3-part movie trilogy. They might film all of it and finish all of it at once, but they'll release one every year for 3 years. That allows people to consume it, to consider it, and build anticipation for the next one. If they put them all out at once, you probably would not get the same level of reception because you don't have... it would be this huge euphoric moment where we're awash and in this new story, and then it fades off really quickly. If you release them in increments, 1, 2, 3 years in between each one, you're going to build more anticipation for the coming installments, and you're going to allow people time to stop and consider each individual piece rather than be hit by all of it at once and then it just, fades away. So my advice would be just to release one and see what happens, and then maybe months or years down the road decide based on that what you can do differently, what you can learn from it. I'm a big fan of trying something out on an experimental basis, see what happens, and then try to learn from that. Even if it's a flop, if it doesn't work out, you can learn, now I know not to do that. I'll try something else with the second one. Okay, and with our last question for this video, Lara asks, do you plan your novel in segments, acts, or chapters, etc.? And what act structure do you prefer to use? Well, I don't have a particular structure that I use for any kind of acts. I don't plan out, I know what you mean by, the typical 3 or 5 act structure that you'll see in books, or usually in like novel series. That's why a lot of times they're trilogies. You have a first, second, and third act, and that's kind of a classical thing that goes back a really long time, and I don't do any of that for the reason that I don't like it. It doesn't allow for a unique sort of pace. With the classic 3-act structure, you have kind of like a new adventurous beginning, you have a sad, tragic middle, and then you have like a redemptive third act, a finish that brings it all together. And I don't like to tie myself up and say that I have to make it this way, because for one, I think that's what audiences expect. It's gonna be kind of a U shape. It's gonna be happy, sad, happy, sort of thing. And I don't like doing that. I make mine like this, based on what I think should happen, based on what the characters' motivations are, based on the new atmospheres and new situations and new events that I can come up with. For one, to keep people guessing so they don't know that the act structure is going to be that way. And 2, because it's more real to life to me. Life isn't always fun. It isn't always good. We don't always get what we want. There's a lot of tragedy that's inevitable, and I like to work that into what I do. And I want to show it being more realistic. With the Grauwelt series, there are so many imperfections that I put into the characters and the events. Like characters will try to do something, and it looks like it's going to work, but it fails at the last moment. Or, it never gets off the ground. And there's so many of these willful flaws that I build into the story and to the characters themselves, because I want to make it realistic. I want you to think that this is a real place somewhere where real beings actually live, And it's not some kind of contrivance of a person just making it up and following this formula that was devised and adopted by, ancient story writers and playwrights from the past. So I don't use any sort of act or chapter structure. I just make it as organic and natural as possible based on where the story needs to head, where I want it to go. And as for you, if you're going to write something, use it, experiment with the different act structures, maybe devise your own or do kind of a free format like I do. Do what you're comfortable with, experiment with it a lot. I know, a classic act structure can work really well, and a lot of people do use it, and a lot of fans do like it, but it's just not something that works for me, and I'm uncomfortable forcing myself into a kind of expectation. I'd rather it just flower from the bottom up. So it doesn't work for me, but it might work for you or someone else, and that's perfectly fine. All of us have our different tastes and capabilities when it comes to that. So that concludes this question and answers video. I'd like to thank everyone that sent in questions and all of you folks that send me emails or leave me comments every day. I do read everything and I do get back to everyone, and I encourage all the suggestion and questions that you could possibly think up, because it really helps me think about what I'm doing here and how I can make these sorts of videos that are addressing what you guys want to see, what you guys want to know. So if you do have any questions or comments, let me know in the comment section of this video. You can also email me directly at victor.salinas@grauwalt.com. I'll put my email address in the video description and also in the video itself. Feel free to make comments or suggestions or ask questions about these videos, about my work in the Grauwalt series, about me personally. Anything you want, really. I do promise to get back to you in a fairly timely manner. I usually can get back to you in the same day or the next day. And I'd like to once again thank everyone that's subscribed, everyone that's watching this video. I really honestly could not make these videos, wouldn't make these videos if you guys weren't watching them. So I really do thank you for the opportunity to answer your questions. Don't forget to rate and share this video if you liked it, and subscribe to the Grauwalt channel. I'll talk to you guys next time. Bye.